Hey, this is Todd. This will hopefully be a quick video in which I will talk about measuring time in the dungeon. I know I've covered this in other of my OSR videos and perhaps other videos besides, but it is a topic that comes up periodically. I see it discussed and questions asked about it. So I decided to create this video in which I could talk about it separated from other OSR elements or concepts that it might have gotten mixed up with in other videos. So here goes. We talk about time in the dungeon. The first thing to ask ourselves is, well, why are we tracking time to begin with? I think it's good to track time for its own sake. Certainly as a player, it is good to have an idea of how much time it takes to do things, to have that mental clock ticking. Perhaps I have spells that are in effect that I know might expire at some point, so I want to know what I can do before that happens or what I need to do. As a GM, certainly, I think it is good to know how much time the party is spending in the dungeon and if there are any consequences to that time, and hopefully there are, that you'll know when those consequences come due. And certainly if you're using resource management in the dungeon, time is the master resource, which then triggers the usage of all the other resources. So on that level, it is necessary that time itself is tracked. Otherwise, how can you tell when other things that depend on time, such as torches, lanterns, we just mentioned spells and their durations, how long those things last? We need to know time. The next question is, well, how are we measuring time? I go by the standard that I think was in Basic Expert, which is usually where I default for most of my basic assumptions. It might be different in different editions, and of course you are welcome to create your own. But the assumptions I go with is, and I always forget whether it's rounds or turns, just for the sake of internal consistency in this video, I'm going to use the phrase exploration turn for the basic segment of time. It can be confusing sometimes where you might hear exploration round, exploration turn used interchangeably, or at least maybe one blog or resource will talk about exploration rounds, another one will talk about turns. I'm going to use turns. Hopefully I won't accidentally slip into rounds. If I do, I apologize. Just know that if I do say round instead of turn, I mean a turn. That basic turn is 10 minutes. 10 minutes seems like a good number. Obviously, we're dealing with minutes and hours. 10 minutes, you get 6 segments per hour, which I think works for most of what, at least in BX, and those systems, the kind of things you're rolling for, makes a lot of sense. I feel like it just makes sense for me. I think it's a good number. I think that the important thing is really not what number you choose. If you use 5 minutes, if you want to use 20 minutes, however you want to do it. You just want to use segments that will work for the kind of game you're running, the kind of assumptions that you have, and that the players can all know and understand. And I find that 10 minutes works well for me, so that's what I go with. So you end up with 6 exploration turns to 1 hour, and usually that is the rotation. So things that are happening once per hour, such as random encounter checks, if you're doing that, and sometimes they happen more than once an hour, once or twice an hour, right? You're talking on certain turns of the exploration turns, maybe the first turn or the fourth turn or the third turn, or whenever you want to do it, that will trigger. If you have overloaded that die, like I mentioned in my dynamic dungeons video, if you're overloading the wandering monster die so that you roll it every exploration turn, that makes it even simpler. Every time you tick off 10 minutes, you roll the die. The thing you want to be aware of is that 10 minutes may seem too long for certain tasks. It might seem too short for other tasks. You want to make sure your players are clear on that. I think in the end, it's a wash from some of the tasks that might be shorter, get sort of rounded up to 10 minutes. Some of the ones that are longer, but not substantially longer, get rounded down 10 minutes. And the idea is that we're not trying to get into the weeds in, well, this took 30 seconds and this took 6 minutes and 20 seconds and this took 15 seconds. And we're trying to add all that up together. We want to keep this simple. We want to keep this a system that is as inobtrusive as possible while still providing some benefits. So to do that, we're just going to all agree on 10 minutes. And this is something that if you have a session 0, or even if you're in your campaign, but this is something that you're going to implement, have that pre-session beforehand where you just shake everything out, get everybody around and have everyone kind of come together and understand the timekeeping so that you can all be on the same page. When it comes to tracking which tasks take up how much amount of time, like I said, I default everything to 10 minutes. But as far as your standard tasks, it comes down to searching is usually a big one in dungeons. And for that, it's a 10 foot by 10 foot area takes 10 minutes. And again, you're going to just round down or round up. So if it's 15 by 15, you might round up and say that's going to take 20 minutes. If it's 12 by 12, maybe you say that just takes 10 minutes, right? Easy peasy. It does put in perspective when your party enters a room of even a modest size, how much time it takes to actually search that if they're going to be thorough. And that can definitely be a way to kind of nudge your party if they're the group that likes to just search everything all the time. So you want to avoid the arguments, get that down. So the other thing besides searching that is important is movement. That defaults to 120 feet takes 10 minutes. And you might think, well, that's not that much walking, much distance for 10 minutes of time. But you have to remember the concept here is that you're moving carefully. You're trying to be quiet. You're trying to listen with and use all of your senses. This is a strange environment. You are not comfortable. So you're moving a little bit slower. You're moving more deliberately, and that takes more time. If your party wants to deliberately rush, you might be able to say, okay, well, you can maybe double that distance or even triple it, depending on how you want to do in that 10-minute period, and then have whatever consequences you like, which might be now you're making lots of noise because you don't care. And if you're looking for traps, well, now you're not, because you can't rush and also be aware of traps at the same time, right? You can create whatever consequences you like, but you're going to default to 10 minutes for 120 feet movement. And then the last one that comes up, it's not so much something that gets measured in segments. It is similar to the distance in time principle, which is that every hour you're supposed to spend one exploration turn at rest. And the reasons are similar to why you move slowly and not quickly per 10 minutes. And that is that this is a very stressful environment. You've been tensed up. You've been moving with care and deliberation, and your eyes and your ears and all your senses are at this high alertness level. This is a hostile environment. So you need to take that breather once every 10 minutes. Now, classically, they don't tell you what happens if you don't take that breather, but you can create your own exhaustion rules or whatever you'd like to create to make that meaningful. But that's the other one that generally comes up. So we have, in essence, just a few buckets of things, right? So we have one bucket, which is just whatever, any particular task that isn't searching or moving takes at least 10 minutes. And you can, of course, have it take more than 10 minutes if you feel like it. But if you're not sure how long it takes, 10 minutes is what it takes. Searching 10 by 10, 10 feet by 10 feet per 10 minutes. And then 120 feet of movement per 10 minutes. And then lastly, if you want to use the concept of needing a rest, that takes 10 minutes and you have to do it once per hour. And the consequences of not taking that are whatever you'd like. And that's about it. I suppose the last thing we might want to talk about is how are you tracking it? You can just use check marks or tick lines on a piece of scrap paper. That works fine. I don't know if Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 or the other virtual tabletops have easy tracking for time. I keep thinking that these tools, since they have so much automation, and really that's one of the big benefits, besides the fact that it's a shared virtual space, is all the automation. So it would be nice if they had automating tools for tracking time. I don't know if they do, but all you need is some kind of scratch pad, notepad kind of space to be able to just use your keyboard to put in some check marks or ticks or whatever. I'm sure you could rig up Excel or some kind of easy web form or something else to just let you hit a button or something to add time together. And then it's really up to you to determine what happens when that time accumulates, besides things like resources expiring or being used up, such as torches and lanterns, spell durations and whatnot. Obviously, there are your wandering monster encounters if you are using those, or if you have overloaded them. What happens with those? Rerolling it, those are consequences. That's really about it. The time is there for you to do with what you will, but it definitely gives you that tool of not only the knowledge of knowing how long things are taking and how that works in your world, but a way to adjudicate the consequences of time passing in these hostile spaces, because really that is ultimately what a dungeon is. It is a very hostile, unfriendly place. Let me know if you have your own tools or tricks or things that you track time for, or how you track time. Certainly, if someone out there has experience with any of the virtual tabletops and knows of their tools, please let me know in the comments below. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like videos like these, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it a lot. There's also the bell so you can get the immediate notification when one of these posts. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day or night, or whenever you are watching or listening to this. Game on, and I will talk to you later.